Gentlemen, welcome back to the Front Row Dads podcast. I'm joined today by Jairek Robbins. We're going to have a chat about family and all things relating to family. Before we launch into this, guys, I just wanted to remind you that December 2nd through the 4th, we're in Austin for our first live event. 150 spots are going to be filled. The tickets are available now. We've got our friends like Hal Elrod's going to be speaking, which, by the way, Jairek was in the Miracle Morning movie. He had a great part. I was really cool. One of Jarek's friends, Preston Smiles, is going to be there speaking. Justin Donald, the lifestyle investor, and many others. It's going to be a great event. Hope to see you there. And also, our online summits are happening every 8 weeks. We focus on one of our 6 pillars within Front Row Dads. So it's, of course, parenting and marriage, but other things like wealth and legacy, business evolution, emotional intelligence, and all of that is packaged up and delivered over the course of a year in a journey of the summit series. If you can't fly to a local event, then maybe you can join us online. We've got guys from all over the world that are in. And we're always constantly exploring the real stories, what's happening behind the scenes in people's lives as they attempt to do fatherhood, marriage, and all the things associated with it. I've been a fan from a distance and connected in various ways to Jairek Robbins. He is in a space that I appreciate, which is in the personal and professional growth field. He wants to help people to elevate their lives. And that is cutting it short, but let's just get it right into the conversation. Jairek, welcome to the show, man. I'm really glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So let's start with what's in focus for you right now, literally in this moment, as you show up today. What are you excited about, man? What's going great for you? What can we celebrate?
I'm excited. I just got over a stomach bug for the last 3 days. So I'm excited. I don't have liquid fire pants any longer. And it sounds ridiculous to celebrate that, but whenever you go through it, you always celebrate on the other side when it's over. So as random as that is, it feels good to be healthy again.
Yeah.
I got a good workout in and my stomach's feeling better and my body feels good.
Dude, every now and then you got to get checked like that, right? You need something to go wrong so you know when it's going right.
I don't know what I ate between here and Michigan and back, but it did not float well with my innards. Yeah. They decided it was the wrong thing to enter the body, so it decided to quickly exit the body for me without choice.
Your body's at work?
We think about how much mental control and emotional control and physical control. We take control of our bodies and we do all these things. My God, eat the wrong thing and you learn that you have no control.
Here's an interesting question. This is very relevant or recent for me too, and relevant to this topic of when things go wrong. Yesterday, the first time I'm talking about this, I'm in my house and I hear this pop outside like a firework, but it's in the middle of the day. Now I'm in Austin, Texas. It hasn't rained here in forever. It's been 100 degrees for weeks and weeks and weeks, very dry. And I hear this and I walk outside and then I see smoke in the woods behind my house. And very quickly, I piece it together that there's got to be a fire. I call 911. I walk over to the fence. I listen a little closer and I can hear the crackling of the fire in the woods. This is behind my house, about 100 yards. And before you can blink, there's 4 fire trucks in front of my house running hoses through the backyard. They're coming at it from the other side. So there is a forest fire 100 yards behind my house in the dry heat of Austin. And I as soon as I see this and I think, this could end quick. This could be quickly at my back door. I tell the kids, grab the dog, get what's important, get in the car. And it was a very enlivening and adrenaline producing moment. But as I went to bed last night, I had a lot of appreciation for all the things that could be taken away from you in an instant. I'm curious also for you, just cutting right to the deep stuff, right? Is what's happened recently in your life? And let's say in the last 30, 60, 90 days, or even in the last year, if we have to go back that far, but what's come up for you that helped you appreciate your life? Where did you get a check-in aside from picking up a stomach bug on the way to Michigan?
Usually it's people around me. People inspire me. And so listening to their stories, I have a friend who's over in Uganda. He takes care of 24 kids that were orphaned in the street there. And I tend to fund their food every month. And, just checking in with him. How are the kids doing? Everyone's health good. And you'll hear stories where someone needs to go to the dentist or someone needs to go to the eye doctor and they don't have the money to do so. Someone needs a surgery but can't afford it. And you just hear what they're going through, and it instantly kind of brings you back. There's a dude up in, I think he's in Canada. It's like Mad Motivator or something on Instagram. And he just goes around and helps people. And you just hear the sweetest stories of what people are going through and where they've been and how they landed up there and where they're going. But he does stuff where he'll just write, a note says, "You matter. I know you don't think so some days, but I just wanted to remind you that you do. Hope you have a great day," and put $100 in a card, and then walk up to someone at the gas pump and just be like, "Hey, I just wanted you to have this." And he like hands them a card and walks away, and the person opens it up, and then you see them get into their car and just burst into tears. And you think like, wow, how fragile was that human in that moment? And humans are wildly resilient, but how did one word, someone just looking at him and saying, "You matter," how did that cause just a burst of an explosion of tears out of their eyes and all that emotion that just kind of amplified in their whole body? Yeah. It's like, what were they going through in that moment where all they needed is a reminder that they mattered, and then boom, tears are flowing. And it's the littlest things. And so I look for stuff like that. And that brings me back to just being grateful and remembering and being like, wow. As simple as this sounds, we have a beach house here in Puerto Rico. And so when we travel to other places, I've been having a recurring experience where no matter where it is, I look out the window and I just shake my head and go, why are we here? Like, why aren't we home? This is
right,
stupid.
right,
like, why would we? I mean, look out the window and then remember what looking out the window at home looks like. Why would we not be at our home? This is a horrible decision. And I was telling my wife on our flight home, I was like, I've only had that feeling in 2 places I've lived, where every other place I visited reminds me of wanting to just be freaking at our house. And luckily we've been in one of those places that we have now, where it feels like that every time we go somewhere else. I look out the window, I'm like, bad decision. We need to go back home.
In my 20s, I definitely can relate to wanting to be on the road, constantly exploring new places. And now at 47, planted in Austin, we just bought like what I would call my dream home. I don't want to travel anywhere right now, because whenever I'm out traveling, I have this, I can't wait to get back to our home, our camp. We really worked hard to make it feel like home. A few minutes ago, Jairek, you brought this idea of, somebody giving somebody a card, saying a few words and having it just really, really impact them. When you look at your life, and let's take two areas of your life, one, you as a child, and one, you as a father now. When you think about words that were spoken to you, either by your dad or other people, and maybe father figures, let's say, but if you look back to your childhood, what words, what one word, one phrase, a few words that were spoken to you made a big impact? And then also think about your life as a dad now. What words do you hope to speak most often, to make an impact? If you can cover those 2 areas.
Sure. I'll start with my mom. I know it's a dad's show, but I'll start with mom, rolling the dad, and then come to being a dad.
I love it.
So I was raised mostly by my mom. And so with my mom, words made a huge difference. She was studying NLP and getting her master prac certificate when I was in her belly, literally. And so she went through all that and learned how powerful words are to the human experience. And she made sure that as she raised me, to very purposefully pick words and reinforce thoughts and beliefs that would build me into the man she hoped me to be. And it was beautiful. It was very intentional. She was very aware of who she let me spend time with and where she would allow me to be. She would pick family members who had really beautiful, loving, long-standing relationships and make sure I spent more time at their house than family members who struggled to have relationships. She would pick role models for me to be around and make sure I was in the rooms with those people and make sure that they participated when I was growing up. So she was very purposeful in who she was putting me around and who she would allow in the space. I remember she started dating a guy at one point, And she decided, I don't want him around my son. I don't want my son growing up around someone like that. And so she removed that human from her life purely because she didn't think it was a good idea to have me around a man like that. Fast forward to my dad. My dad was busy building when I was born. My mom and dad were more or less poor. They lived in a 400 square foot apartment when I was about to be born, and life wasn't that luxurious. So they were young kids, 17, 18. I was 24 when I was born. But they were figuring their shit out in life. They did not have traction yet. They didn't build anything big yet. The year I was born, my dad went from making 38 grand a year to making $1 million the next year. So I was his fuel. I was his inspiration. And the inspiration was really out of desperation of, I will not let my kid come into this world and go through the same financial hardships he went through. So he busted his ass and figured out how to make $1 million that year at 24, 25 years old, which was a huge, huge transition in his world. But when you give a 24-year-old $1 million, they don't always have the, experience of what to do with it to make it last and make it grow and make it multiply and all the other things that he knows how to do now. And so growing up, he was out building. He was building a career, building an empire, building businesses. He was on the road 350 something days out of the year. So he would physically be home maybe 10 days out of a year. He texted me in 2020 after spending 17 days at home and said, this is the most amount of time I've been at one house, one home since I've been 17 years old. And so that he's been on the road and moving like that for 40 something years. Yeah. He's been doing that. Yeah. And so I grew up with that. I grew up where dad was always on the road. When I was really little, I see pictures of myself where the suitcase was my bassinet. Like we were on the road with them. So we'd go from seminar to seminar and they'd set a suitcase, put clothes around the circle, and I would sleep in the middle of it. I saw one where a hotel drawer was pulled out and clothes were around in a circle and I was sleeping in a drawer. They left it open, luckily. But like I grew up on the road. My dad was a rock star. He was doing his thing and building businesses. And so I grew up a little bit like that when I was really little. And then I grew up with my mom. And so growing up with my mom, I would see my dad on certain trips. And when you say what specific words, they always spoke life into me. I remember when I was really little, there's pictures of my dad, like drew a smiley face on my mom's belly and was talking to it. And I'm like, Mom, what would he say? And she told me like he would speak life into her belly to hopefully help me become the man they dreamed of me becoming. And so they were very intentional about what they said and how they said it. I'll fast forward. I remember I was speaking at a youth leadership event and a kid stood up. And when she stood up, she goes, let me say first, I know there's no such thing as a bad day or hard times. It's all learning lessons and ways we can grow. She's like, but can I just have a shitty day? And I started laughing. I'm like, tell me more. Like, how did you come up with those things? And she's like, well, both my parents are life coaches, so I know it's all just a way to learn. Right. And I started laughing. I looked at my wife, and my wife went like this. And afterwards, when we left, I said, what did you hear? She's like, I hope to God our kid doesn't land up like that. Yeah. And I started laughing. I said, what do you mean? And she's like, God, she's fighting to feel human. Yeah. And I started laughing and I said, as much as my parents spoke truth into me and spoke the future visions and possibilities, my parents are also really fucking real. Like they don't bullshit around. If you're feeling like shit, well, fucking do the best at feeling like shit you possibly can and then fucking snap out of it and let's go do something else. Yep. Like they're not going to try to prevent you from being human. I think so often parents with their best intentions set up barriers between realness and being human, and then the facade of trying to use all the words perfectly somehow to elevate consciousness and whatever else they're aiming for. And the truth is, like, there's humans anything we're going to do, we're straight up just going to suck at it when we start. Then eventually, if we suck long enough, we'll become good. And if we're good long enough, we become great. And if we're great long enough, we'll fucking master it. But it's that process of being willing to let someone suck. And so I think one of the major lessons growing up was my dad was always willing to let me just be horrible at stuff. And he didn't take offense to it. He wasn't mad about it. He wasn't frustrated over it. He'd just be like, try it again. And what he wouldn't be okay with is quitting. Like if I was going to do something, even if I sucked at it, he's fine with me sucking at it forever until I figure it out. But to suck at it and then say this is stupid and I'm going to quit and not try, that would drive him nuts. Him and I used to have a blow up about once a year on a ski slope somewhere. Because his thought process was, if you want to learn how to ski, go to the top of the mountain, pick the hardest slope, and you'll fucking figure it out real fast. That is awesome, but it doesn't work for a 10-year-old. So I'd get to the top with him, not knowing how to really ski. I'd go down half a slope, start crying and call for ski patrol. And he would be on the bottom of the slope screaming up the mountain, no fucking son of mine is going to quit. Get your ass up and fucking face the fear. Get down the hill. And I'd wave at people and cry and be like, can you call ski patrol? My ankle hurts. And my God, he wanted to kill me in all of the most loving way.
All right.
But I learned differently. He learned by total immersion and intensity. I mean, put me on the fucking bunny slope and give me a week. Like, let me figure out how to suck in a reasonable way before you throw me on a double black diamond and tell me to figure it out. Right. So we just have different approaches. Yeah. But we didn't know that when I was 10. He just had his approach and he tried to use his approach, and his approach didn't roll well with me. Yeah. Now, the truth is, as I grew up, that approach works great in so many different areas of my life. But there were times at those stages of life where it didn't work so well. Yeah. And looking back, it's entertaining, but going through it, my God, it was painful for him and I to have to headbutt once a year on that.
God, what a great lesson to note is that not every strategy is going to work at every stage in life, but also just because you tried that at 10 and it didn't work doesn't mean you shouldn't circle it back. And maybe at 15, they're ready for it, or at 20, or because you're a dad forever, 25, 30, 35, there are different seasons and probably different categories where it could be more effective. Like in sports, it might work, but in emotional intelligence, it doesn't. Whatever, but constantly being willing to experiment.
Totally. Yeah. There's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and she talks about the growth mindset.
Totally.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways I have is people try to decide if they're a fixed or a growth mindset. And I was like, no, which category of your life are you a growth mindset? And which category of your life are you totally a fixed mindset?
Good distinction.
And people like to try to act like they're all growth mindset. I'm like, I guarantee there's some topic of your life we get to and you're like, nope, I know it all. I don't need your help. I got it. I'm fucking great. Don't fucking watch me. I'm awesome. I guarantee there's at least one category of life. Yeah. And if you pick it apart, you'll find it. Yeah. I mean, talk to guys about their sex life. Be like, growth mindset or fixed mindset.
Right. Exactly.
And just watch their face.
Yes.
Watch their face. They'll be like, what do you mean? And I'm like, are you open to new things? And they're like, well, sure I am. And I'm like, really? Yeah. And then you show them something. They're like, oh, fuck that. You're like, right? Fixed mindset. There you go. You're stuck.
I've talked about that on this show, by the way. Many episodes ago, I had this conversation about, I really opened up about being in the bedroom with my wife and how, I mean, at this time, when did I record this? I probably was like 43. Yeah, I was probably 43. And I remember telling everybody, I was like, at 43, I figured some shit out. And I'm like, I thought I was great. I thought I was amazing. I was not. Yeah, I was not. It took me a long time to get to the place, but that is exactly right, man. And when you start talking about fixed mindset, I start thinking about being right in my home, about rules. Like, this is how something works. It's supposed to be done this way. And as much as I think I'm curious and open and flexible and adaptive and all these things, if I really ask myself, where am I rigid? Where am I stern? I'll come up with all these ways that you need to do life. And then when it's not happening that way, I get really upset and I get frustrated, and I'm definitely below the line. And, it's to me, and I wrestle there too. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, of how do you balance the idea of being curious and open and having a growth mindset, and how else can I see things, versus where it's important to like draw a line and have a standard. And, this is the way it's going to be done, and have a firm fatherly boundary. Does that show up for you, or maybe again, childhood, or in your life now as a dad?
Sure. Not yet. My son's 2. He and luckily people like terrible 2s. I'm like, no, he's the terrific 2. Like, he's funny and loving. He's kind, he's caring, he's curious, he's happy, he's creative. He just learned no this weekend, so maybe that'll change soon. But like, so far, so good. And a lot of that has to do with my wife. I think one of the coolest things that when we were about to have a child, I asked her was, paint me the picture of how you'd like motherhood to look for you. Do you want to be a full-time mom? Do you want to be a half-time mom? Do you want to be a mom with 5 nannies? Do you want to build an empire? What do you want? How do you want it? And she told me what she dreamed of. And I said, okay, let me rearrange some things and make that happen for you so that it can, that dream can be exactly how you dream it. She goes, how do you want it? And I said, well, here's what I'm able and willing and excited to do. And here's what I'm not willing, able, or excited to do. And here's my plan of how to offset that. Are you okay with that? And so we talked through our vision of our perfect way, and we talked through our plan of how to make both happen. And luckily, we're in a place in life where we can turn both of our visions into reality. And so we have people helping all the time and support systems. I have a friend who him and his wife had 1 child, but they had 2 nannies. And I was like, that's excessive. And the rule was no one's allowed to be with my child if they're less than 80% of their best self. And I went, ooh, that's a good rule. That's a great rule. Like, I only want people at their best around my kid, because I want my kid to see what your best always looks like, so that they grow up thinking that's normal.
Yeah.
And then they strive to always hold that. Now I was like, well, shouldn't your kids see people at their worst? And he goes, that'll happen naturally throughout life. But I want my kid to start their perception with what people's best look like. And I went, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that, and I looked at what moms go through. And I said, how do I provide an environment? It's why we landed up in Puerto Rico. How do I provide an environment that supports my wife in all the excess energy and demand that's about to be put on her body? And so she was pregnant, and we looked around the world, and I said, we were living in Miami Beach in a skyrise South Beach. It was cool. It was nowhere near the size of P. Diddy's apartment, but I always call it a P. Diddy apartment just because it's all whited out, like white sheer curtains, teal ocean Miami in all directions. Like, we had windows all the way around. We had ocean in every direction, like very Miami. But luckily, we thought about it. We're like, this is not a building or place to raise a kid. Like, it's convenient, it's cool, it's fun, it's not, and it was very children friendly, to be honest. There's lots of families in the building, but not where we wanted to raise a kid. And the energy, it's New York City on a beach. Like, it's not a calm, relaxing place. It's a go chaotic place.
Totally.
And so we looked at the world, and I said, where in the world is there a slow pace of life that is roughly within the right time zones for our businesses, and that we'd love to live there, so that the environment naturally supports the process? And so we had lived in Costa Rica before, and we looked at Costa Rica, and we said, okay, maybe we'll go back to Langosta, just outside of, Langosta, which is right outside of Tamarindo. And we looked at there and said, should we go there? And we're like, we heard some things about the very west side of Puerto Rico. So let's go see. So we said, okay, we'll check it out at some point. Never got to it. I was speaking at an event in New Jersey, went to go catch a flight to see a client in Kentucky. The flights all canceled, random thunderstorm. All of a sudden, 2 flights were still going to take off. One going to Naples, Italy, one going to Puerto Rico. We were like, do you want to go see the other side of the island? We're like, sure, let's just take that one. So we jumped on the flight, landed here, got a beach house just for a week on Airbnb to just check it out. Met a random dude at CrossFit named Harry, who was like, what are you guys doing? We're like, checking it out. And he's like, you're thinking of moving here? We're like, yeah. He's like, I got a pocket listing if you want to see it. I was like, okay. I remember getting into his truck thinking, am I about to die? Like, I'm on a random island in a random place, man, getting into a random dude named Harry's truck that I met at CrossFit. Like, is this a good idea? I was like, I don't know. And I remember sizing him up, and he was older. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could take him though if it came down to it. Like, as long as he doesn't have a gun, I think I'm fine. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, we'll find out. So we got in his truck with him. We drove. We saw a place that it's one of our neighbors' houses, and I was like, nah, that's not home. It's a nice little cool beach hut, but it's not home. And we drove by the house we're in. I remember seeing it, being like, wow, that's really big. I think it's probably out of the budget, but we drove by, got the car, drove back. I'm like, fuck it, let's just go see it. So parked in the driveway, kind of walked around the house. And as I was walking around the house, the door literally like came flying open. This little lady came out. She's like, what do you want? And I was like, se vende for sale? She's like, call the realtor. I'm like, Jesus, okay. And she's like, are you serious? Or are you just looking? I'm like, no, I'm serious. And I was like, and she's like, when are you thinking of moving? I'm like, if I like it, I'll literally buy it right now. She's like, just a minute. And she slammed the door. She came back. She goes, my husband says you could see it. And I was like, okay. So she let us in, and this lady talked shit to us.
You're like, do you mind if I sage this house as I enter it, please?
Yeah. She literally talked shit the whole time. She'd show us stuff, and she's like, this needs spackling. Do you know how to spackle? And I'm like, I could figure it out. She's like, here, show me. And she like handed me a cup, and I did.
No way.
I don't know what you're doing. She's like, do you know how to do electric work? My son does electric work. I'm like, no, I don't know how to do it. She's like, oh, men these days are useless. Like, she
Sounds
literally
like
talked shit the whole time. But we looked around and we're like, yeah, I kind of like this one. And so we looked at it for like 20 minutes, and then I was like, yeah, we'll buy it. And she looked at me and she's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, okay. I was like, I'll call a realtor and tell him to write up an offer and we'll buy it. And so the next day we bought it from him.
No way.
And then,
are you and your wife both impulsive like that? And I don't know if that's impulsive or just solid in your knowing, right? Do you operate quickly like that? Just gut reaction or trusting your heart? And is that how you've walked through life?
There was gut reaction. There was trusting my heart. Both of us are very good at that.
Yeah.
Like, we joined a private jet membership where random jets would pop up going one way because it was an empty leg between someone who ordered it and somewhere it was going. And we would hop on almost all of them that were going somewhere near us to somewhere. Like, we didn't even know where we were going. Like, we caught one from Chicago to Telluride. And we just hopped on it and went. And as we were landing, the pilot was like, oh, where are you all staying? Do you need a car service? And we're like, yeah, we haven't booked anything yet. And he looked at us and he's like, you know that it's like a popular time of year and most of it's booked out. We're like, oh shit, we didn't think of that.
Yeah.
And he's like, you should probably
take it as it comes
quickly. And we're like, we'll figure it out. And the plane landed, and we found one room that was still available online and booked it. And then another one popped up. It was a different group, a different plane that was dropping someone off. 3 days later, literally, we hopped on and flew out. And I think it took us, I don't know wherever that one went, but like caught one in, caught a random one out. We spent probably 2 years doing that just for fun.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
cool.
Every time a plane would pop up, we'd go somewhere. Just randomly. We like doing that at the airport. We'll just kind of like, when it was just me and her, we'd walk down the middle and just kind of look at all the cities and be like,
let's go there.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that's great.
Let's just hop on that one. And we would literally just go.
Now, having a 2-year-old at this point, and you have one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So having 1 2-year-old, how does that change the game for you now? Are you as spontaneous? I know you talked about how you love Puerto Rico, but you still talked about being other places. So how much travel are you doing, and how are you doing that with a 2-year-old?
So we just started again. We moved here, we landed and got everything set up. We physically moved into the house November 2019.
Yep.
And then COVID kicked off, which we didn't anticipate coming. And we happened to have my wife being pregnant with our first child at home in a beach house that used to be a giant farm in Puerto Rico on a beach. So we were luckily hidden in the middle of nowhere, and our neighbors are chickens and goats and cows, and you can probably hear one crowing. Like, that's where we happened to land up very luckily. And so we had the option to take walks. We got pulled over by the police, I think 3 or 4 times when we were walking while pregnant during COVID. And they're like, they would stop us and be like, where's your Airbnb? We're like, we live here. Like, where do you live? And we're like, Calvache Ward, right over there. And they're like, why are you out walking? You know, you're supposed to be in your house. And my wife would turn sideways and she's like, I'm pregnant. The doctor said I have to go walk. And they're like, oh, we'll just stay close to your house then. And so luckily they were lenient with us, and we'd go walk to see the cows and feed them mangoes and stuff like that. And so
hold on. Let me prod on that. Let me poke at that for a quick second. I'm wondering for you, Jairek, like, I just put myself in your shoes. Did it take a lot of restraint for you not to kind of like defend in that moment? Like, how did you process that level of authority and you know, how did you react in that moment, both internally and externally?
Sure.
To that confrontation from the authorities.
So what's interesting, my mom brought me up with a very specific phrase: break the rules, follow the law.
Mm.
And so I grew up with the psychology of follow the law. If it's the law, it's the law. Follow the law. But the rules are meant to be broken. If it's just a rule, you can do whatever you want. If it's a law, follow it. And so when it was time for me to have a curfew, I remember I asked my mom, what's my curfew? And she goes, I don't know. What's the law? And I went, I don't know. So I had to go look up the law and find out that I think it was under 18, it was 10 p.m. curfew in San Diego. She was like, okay, your curfew's 10 p.m. because that's the law.
Interesting.
I was like, okay, cool. Like, and so she raised me like that. Just follow the law, break the rules. My dad follows neither sometimes. So that was different because I go with my dad and he doesn't there's opinions on this, but I don't think he blatantly does it. I think he just looks for the most efficient path. Yeah. And he's happy to pay the consequence. So if you're going to break the law, know what the consequence is and be happily willing to do it and cover it if you're going to do that. Yeah. So he has a different approach. Like I remember as a kid, we'd go to the mall. He wouldn't try to find a parking spot. He would drive straight to the closest physical thing next to the thing he was taking us to. And he would like park in the loading dock, and we'd get out of the car and walk in. 9 times out of 10, as we walked back to the car, a police officer would be there putting a ticket on the car. He'd walk up and he'd be like, you know, you can't park here. He's like, I'm so sorry. I'd be happy to pay it. Yep. Happy to. And it wasn't like a don't ticket me. What are you doing? I'm happy to pay it. It's my donation to the city. No problem, officer. Love to do it. And so for him, the math equation was $200, $250 parking ticket, donation to the city. Happy to do it because it saves me the extra 72 seconds between where I'm going and where I need to be. Yeah. And so he had a totally different psychology. Now, he's not a fan of break the law and then bitch and argue about it. Like, that doesn't work for him. He's like, if you're going to violate the law, be willing and happy to pay the consequence. So know what it is and consider you already have to pay it if you're going to make the decision to do it. And so those are two very different thought processes. One is follow it. One is, hey, you can step over the line, but just be happy to pay the consequence. Yeah. Be thrilled to do it. If you're cool with that, go for it. And so it's different philosophies there. And so with me, when someone pulls me over and goes, hey, the law is you're supposed to be at home, I go, okay. Like, I'm willing, if there's a fine, I'm willing to pay it. If you're cool with us walking because my wife's pregnant, we have a doctor's note that says she needs to walk, I'm fine with that too. Just let me know. I'm okay either way. Like, there's no resistance, there's no tension, there's nothing here. Now, if they would have tried to arrest my wife or something like that, I probably would be in jail because I'd break someone's leg. Like, there's fierceness that comes out if it goes beyond that. But if they would have given me $1,000 ticket for walking well pregnant, I'd happily pay it and high five them. Like, it didn't bother me. And I work hard to have that opportunity to cover stuff like that. Like, it's cool with me. And I learned it from my dad. Just smile and say, no problem. It's a donation to the city. Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about emotions real quick. And I want to be conscious of the time here for you too. So let me take a peek, make sure I'm keeping us on track. Here's my question about emotions. This has been one that of the 6 pillars that we focus on in Front Row Dads, emotion's been the one I've had most growth on in the last 5 years, let's say. Part of why I wanted to be in this group, learn from this group, is because of that particular category, wanting to make sure that not just I don't yell, but that I truly have an understanding of my emotions and can utilize them, navigate them throughout this life. And so I want to talk to you about that, because I want to know what really triggers you, right? And then how do you navigate those emotions? I think many men, especially that are busy men, productive men, people that are high achievers, high performers, like, there's an edge there that can show up. And it definitely shows up for me at times, and learning to understand my triggers, to learn from my triggers, has been a huge piece for me. I'm just wondering for you, what sets you off, and how do you keep yourself in an emotionally centered space, maybe, or however else you would describe that?
Sure. I've been meditating for, I don't know, 12 years, 15 years at this point. And so a friend of mine, Dr. Leah Lagos, put together a program that's really cool. It's a bit expensive to go through, but she works with hedge fund people, pro golfers, pro athletes, NFL coaches, all these people. She's in New York City. It's a biofeedback and neurofeedback program that recalibrates your entire nervous system to calm. And so it doesn't make you calm all the time. It gives you complete control of the throttle and the brake. And so with 1 or 2 breaths, you can throttle up or you can break down, and it's instant like that. And so when it comes to emotions, having control of the gas pedal and having control of the brake pedal is a massive advantage that 90% of humans don't have. And so with her, she literally took a program that she normally charges $15,000 to go through with her. She took all the protocols and put it into the Elite HRV app as a free program anyone can do for 10 weeks. And so if you download the app and you go through her free program in there, it recalibrates your entire nervous system to calm. I've done that whole program, I think 2 or 3 times now, and it's a game changer. And all it does is give you complete control of the gas and complete control of the brake. And you can dial it up or dial it down as quickly as you want to by just using your breath and focus. And it's amazing. Like, once you get to week 7, it's the equivalent. She calls it a screen door. I call it a force field. It's like an emotional force field goes around you, and you can feel anything you want, and it doesn't jack with your nervous system. Like, I can feel as angry as I want, and if you watch my biometrics, they don't change. I can feel as happy as I want, my biometrics don't change. And you're like, what kind of like witchery is this? Because I'm feeling totally frustrated, but if you watch my heart rate and all my things, my nervous system is just maintaining. I'm like, that's fucking awesome, because now I can feel all the emotions with letting the emotions take control over me. This is cool. And so that training is life-changing and game-changing. You could imagine hedge fund guys putting billions of dollars up against or for something. Their emotions go all over the fucking place. That's a lot. And so if you can have your emotions stay right in the zone, and you're still feeling it up here, like the thoughts or emotions are flying mentally, but nervous system wise, you're just in the zone the whole time. You're not stoic. You're not sitting there like staring quietly, like you're in it. But your biometrics and your heart rate are just right in the zone the whole time. It's amazing. And so by recalibrating like that, very few things can actually trigger me. Something I've learned recently that has triggered me, where I'm like, ooh, I'm not my best self right now. This is interesting. The thing that set me off recently. So I've been coaching for 20 years now. I just realized the other day, I was like, holy shit, it's a fucking long time. So I've been doing this since 18 years old. I'm 38. So 20 years I've been doing this. And for 6 of those years, I worked for my dad's company But for the other, 14 years, I've done it myself, for myself, on my own. Like, I hire the people. It's my choice. It's my company. If people do dumb shit, they get fired. Like, I control the ecosystem around me. I pick people I want to hang out with. The most important part when I'm hiring people, as much as skill set's great and skill, will they, is their nature, all that stuff. Like, do I want to see and talk to this human every day? And if I don't, I'm not going to put them on my team. And so earlier this year, Success Enterprises, which is Success Magazine, success.com, Success Spaces, our franchise, Success Lending, our lending company, they reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to help lead the company. My first response was no. I have multiple companies. I'm totally fine. I'm good. And I had dialed in my life where I was working 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, and solid, happy, thrilled, live on an island. My focus is being a dad and being a husband, and I'm good. I surf 2 days, surf on Mondays and Wednesdays. No, I'm sorry, surf on Mondays and Fridays. My wife and I have from 9 a.m. till noon dates that bookend our week to start and end the week. Like, everything was dialed in. I was golden, happy, thrilled. My business mentor, I told him, like, oh, these people reached out. I told him no. And he's like, oh, you might want to say yes to that one. I was like, no offense, but why in the fuck would I say yes to that? And he started laughing and he goes, well, I know you think you have a lot of credibility because you've done a lot and you know what you've done, but most humans, they haven't done anything public. You've done it for the people who know who you are. Like, you've got your own network and they all know who you are and they know that you're legit, but the masses don't. And he said, if you take a public entity and you do what you know how to do with it, now you'll have a public statement piece. So when people look at you, you can say, hey, I took this company, took it over at this point, look at the numbers between here and there, done it for them. I've done it for myself. I've done it for all these people. I can do it for you. It adds a statement piece to your resume. He said, what's going to happen though, is if you take on, they made me the president of Success. And so he said, the moment you take it on, it's going to just completely feel like you've gone backwards in life. I said, what do you mean? And he's like, your schedule is going to get jacked up. You're going to be booked every hour of every day. I'm like, this sounds like horrible. Why would I do this? And he's like, I'm telling you, however long it takes you to get this thing from from here to there and do all these things with it, think of it more like a slingshot. It'll pull you back. When you let it go, at some point you'll be done. You let it go. It'll shoot you 10 times further credibility wise than where you were. And it'll put you in a position to keep doing what you want to do at a much larger scale. Like, I really trust you, but you better be fucking right on this. So I did it. And so I think.
Now, what year was that? When did you?
That was 7 months ago.
Okay. You said yes, 7 months ago.
So for 7 months, I've been the president of Success.
Yeah.
One is it's kind of a fun title. I mean,
yeah.
It sounds like a funky title. You look at the company name and everything. I'm like, that's kind of cool. The other cool part, lineage wise. So Og Mandino, greatest salesman in the world, was part of this. Napoleon Hill was part of this brand. Like, this is the iconic personal development brand that's been around for 125 years.
Yeah.
So to become part of the leadership of the brand is a neat lineage link where It's like, wow, I just got tied into the iconic 125-year-old lineage of personal development. It's a neat, like, I'll be part of the history of the brand for however long the brand keeps going. Hopefully it goes for 1,000 years. Like, that's a fun little weave of history to be a part of.
Yeah.
And it royally jacked up my schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least the schedule I had. And so the trigger is something I didn't think about when saying yes to that. And saying yes to that, I haven't thought of, looked for, applied, or even talked to a job for over, 20 years. I've been in my own thing, or 6, so let's say 14 years. Never even thought about it. Like, why would I do it? What's involved? What do you need to be aware of? What I didn't think of when I said yes was interviewing every human who already worked for the company and making sure those are the people I want to spend time with, because who you spend time with is who you become. You pick up traits, you pick up patterns and habits and thoughts and beliefs. And so most of them are wonderful, wonderful humans. I've just run across a few that the way they look at, go about, or the values they hold about life are radically different, not in what's spoken, but in behavior.
Sure.
And things that trigger me, bullying. I mean, teaming up on someone because you decide you don't like them and then going after them just lights my soul on fire. And so seeing behavior like that has caused me to be like, like I turn into a 7,000 pound gorilla inside. And I've had to breathe that one back down to calm and go, okay, what's real? Is this worth being a 7,000 pound gorilla over? And just realize like, that's their human journey. That's where they're at. That's how they deal with their shit. This human is not part of my life beyond the hours or interaction moments that we have in the same workplace. And is that my battle to fight? Is that the one I want to go fight? Or should I just keep pushing forward in what I'm here to do? Yeah. And those are interesting thoughts. Those are big thoughts. Those apply in a lot more situations right now than just me at work. Like those are big thoughts a lot of people are playing with, where things happen in other parts of the world right now, and human beings trigger their 8,000 pound internal gorilla and go, fuck, is that the fight I need to go fight right now?
Right.
Some do, some don't. Something happened in Ukraine, and I saw a bunch of dudes who are in the US military, retired, who packed their bags and fucking flew there just to go fight the fight. And I was like, damn, their 8,000 pound gorilla lit up, and they said it was worth it. And they got on a plane and showed up and said, give me the stuff I need, and I'm going to go fight this fight. This is wrong. I was like, that's crazy. They decided it was worth doing it. A few of them got there, saw what was real, and went, nope, this ain't worth it, and got back on a plane and flew right home. But it's that thought of what are the things that light it up? Which ones are worth breathing yourself back down to calm, and which ones are worth stepping over the line and saying, no, that's not okay with me. I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah. I appreciate that very much. Looking at the clock, I don't think I'll be able to get through the other 67 questions that I have for you. That all came up naturally as you were talking, man. There's just so much more that I want to dig into. Maybe we'll have a chance down the road, but here's how, let's leave it with this. Let's close this out with a question that, and you can answer this in 30 seconds or you can take as long as you want. Honestly, it's up to you, but
sure.
Here's the question. Thinking about front row dads and why this exists, right? It's family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. So here you are, a businessman. You've created a lot of success. You now have this team that you're leading, this responsibility. You're a father of a 2-year-old. You're married. You live on an island. In many ways, you've created a dream life for yourself. When you think about your vision for the future, right? And specifically as it relates to being a family man, what is the vision that you have right now as a father, calling into existence what you want to see happen in the years ahead as they unfold? What does that look like for you?
Sure. So the word dream life, and I do have to wrap up. They're going to ping me for a meeting in a second. It's a fun part about having a job.
There you go, man. There you go.
It's exciting though. It is fun to do this project. And so one of the things that's really interesting is the dream life concept. I wrote a book about this, and someone gave me the term designing your ideal day. So chapter 1 was how to design the day. Chapters 2 through 11 were how to turn your day into reality. And chapter 12 was then how to design your ideal life. And so when you said it sounds like this dream life you created, it was all intentional. How we wake up, where we go, how we feel, who's around us, the type of projects we work on, the type of people we're around, all those things are very intentional. And so we mapped all this. First, I did it myself. Then when we got married, we did it as a couple. And then we literally turned our vision into reality. And now we literally live it. The book's called Live It, because that's the whole concept. Like, take your dream, turn it into reality. And so we built all of this from scratch. The joke my wife and I have is we'd go on vacation and she'd be like, well, what do you want to do tomorrow? I look at her, I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want to do? She's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to meditate. And then I'm going to do my breath work. Then I'm going to journal. Then I'm going to work out. Then I'm going to eat some breakfast. And then we'll go do something. She's like, that's what you do every day. And I said, well, let me remind you, if there's something else I wanted to do, I'd be doing it. Everything I've built is by intention. Like I've thought it through, I've designed it that way, and then I've built it to be exactly what I want it to be. Everything in my life. And so things happen all the time that totally throw it out of whack. And we just kind of bring it back into the zone. Gets thrown out of whack, just bring it back. And so when we look into the future, a lot of what we're doing right now every day, I mean, building businesses, driving, we have a business program for other business owners, helping them build their businesses. And for most of them, if we look at the three areas like work, relationships, self, the biggest thing in their life is work right now. The next biggest is family or relationships. And then their self is a little dot. And we always ask them, if you could have it all your way, how would it be? And they said, well, it would be family is the biggest one. Self is the next biggest, and work would be a little tiny one. But as a tiny dot, it would still produce enough wealth to deliver the life that my family and myself really wants. I said, great. Let me help you build a business that will do that for you. So we show them how to build the business that produces those results. It's a very similar situation, I think, of what y'all do. But that's their intention. How do I make it so that my family can be my main focus? I can be my secondary focus, and my work is something that supports my life, not my life is something that supports working 24/7. I think in Australia, they have it right where they said in America, most people live to work. In Australia, we work only as hard as we need to be able to then go live. And so instead of living to work, they work to live. And working meaning I put in enough work to be able to provide what's necessary to go live all the life I want for the rest of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Jairek. Thanks for being here. Thanks for carving out the time, man. It means a lot to me and to the Front Row Dad brothers. And yeah, I look forward to more as we go forward. All my best to you and your family, man. And this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.